Okay, I'm going to begin. First of all, it's an honor to be here today, and I want to begin by thanking Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and her incredible staff for helping make today possible. I also want to thank the subcommittee chair, Congressman Christopher Smith, and Congresswoman Karen Bass, the ranking member, for calling the hearing that took place on June 11th, and other members of Congress who have spoken out on this important issue today. And finally, I want to thank our panelists, Maureen Heads of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, actress and child advocate Kelly Rutherford, and Sarah Kurtz, an attorney and mother who has become an expert on the issue of international parental child abduction, or as we call it here today, legal kidnapping, due to her own experience, which is eerily similar to Kelly Rutherford's experience. So the purpose of today's briefing is to shed light on an issue that hasn't received nearly the amount of attention that it should. While there's been a lot written about international parental child abduction generally, the Hague Convention, and the more recently enacted Goldman Act, only recently have people learned that there are U.S. judges ordering American children to move abroad despite the objection of a fit, loving American parent who wants them to remain in the United States. Yes, we're talking about American children being deported to live in a foreign country with a foreign parent when they have an American parent that wants them to remain in the United States. Sounds like a bad movie, and it's really a horror movie. Not only do these rulings often cause children to suffer from emotional and psychological problems, but can and have resulted in the children losing their American residence. So why would an American judge put an American child's residency at risk? That's a very good question, and something I've only recently started to research. Under current law, U.S. family court judges have wide discretion when it comes to deciding which parent a child should reside with, and I was surprised to learn that most have the authority to order an American child to leave the country. One of the many things Congresswoman Jackson Lee and I agree on is the need for U.S. judges to be better educated on the impact their custody decisions have on child abduction and child access issues in foreign countries. Many of the judges may not realize that the moment a child lands in another country, their foreign parent can file for sole custody, thereby limiting the enforceability of the U.S. custody order that sent them there in the first place. As many, quote-unquote, left behind American parents have learned the hard way, there are no second chances, and once the wheels are set in motion, it's very difficult to reverse them. Hague Convention cases can be very expensive and time-consuming, especially when you factor in legal fees and travel between the U.S. and the foreign country. I hope that as a result of the discussion today, you will come away with a greater understanding of the changes that need to be made to protect our children from being effectively deported from this country and stripped of their American residency. These changes not only require better judicial education, as mentioned above, but also changes in the manner in which our government helps the left-behind parents obtain access to their children, and in some cases, their safe return. Finally, I propose that we change the law to make it more difficult for a U.S. judge to order an American child to leave the country. In my opinion, and of course I look forward to hearing from our panelists, courts should be required to make a special showing that the child would be better off living in another country, and that their custody order does not place the child at risk of being deemed a resident of the foreign country and or losing their American residency. And with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Maureen Heads is a supervisor with the Missing Children Division of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. In this role, Ms. Heads regularly provides technical assistance and support to families, law enforcement agents, and attorneys to help prevent abductions and assist in locating and recovering missing children. During the 14 years she has been with NCMEC, Ms. Heads has filled multiple roles in the Missing Children's Division with a particular focus on international cases and the Hague Convention, before being promoted in 2007 to supervise staff in the Family Abduction Unit. Ms. Heads has lectured and presented on missing children at numerous conferences in the U.S., Costa Rica, Mexico, Peru, and Spain, as well as co-authoring a chapter on family abduction in NCMEC's Investigation and Program Management Guide for law enforcement agencies responding to cases of missing and abducted children.
All right, thank you so much. I'd like to thank Congresswoman Jackson Lee and her staff, as well as other distinguished members. I'm pleased to be here this afternoon on behalf of the National Center. First, I would like to thank all the members of Congress who have been working and continue to support and provide assistance to families impacted by international abductions. This is a very important issue for the National Center, and we are appreciative of the opportunity to be part of this public discussion and any steps that can be taken to raise awareness of the issue. For over 30 years, the National Center has focused on the problem of international child abduction, and we have worked closely with the Department of State, with law enforcement agencies across the United States to assist parents and families faced with this situation. In addition to a historic role and deep understanding of the Hague Convention, the National Center has a specialized unit within the Missing Children's Division whose sole work is family abductions. The dedicated members of this unit appreciate the unique and at times complicated and complex challenges that parents face when confronted with an international abduction, as well as their frustrations and disappointments. Our teams work closely with parents, advocates, and attorneys by providing resources to help locate missing children, technical assistance on the criminal and civil aspects of a case, and reunification and counseling services for families and victims. In the last 20 years, the National Center has provided assistance on over 5,900 cases in which a child was wrongfully taken outside the United States or retained in another country. To highlight the National Center's work, I would like to share with you a case we recently helped resolve. In 2009, the National Center was contacted by a searching mother seeking help to locate her missing 8-year-old daughter. The child was scheduled to have a short visit with her father, but was never returned. The mother called local law enforcement for assistance, and a warrant was issued for the father. But despite ongoing efforts of the mother, local and federal law enforcement, the whereabouts of the father and child remain unknown for almost 5 years. Then in May 2014, law enforcement officers received the lead they needed. An individual had been visiting relatives in Mexico when they were introduced to the father and child who lived in the same remote area. The individual returned to the U.S. and was later shopping at a Walmart store in Texas when they noticed a poster from the National Center featuring 2 familiar faces. They contacted the National Center's 24-hour call center to report that they had met the taking father and the missing child in Mexico, who were using different names. The National Center contacted the assigned investigator with the United States Marshal Service, who immediately followed up. After extensive interagency collaboration, a U.S. Marshal team stationed in Mexico City traveled to the remote area with Mexican authorities and with State Department personnel. The team was able to locate the father and child and confirm their identities that day. The child was placed into protective custody and returned to her mother, while the father was arrested and deported back to the United States. In addition to assisting with active missing child cases, the Family Abduction Unit also works closely with parents and attorneys to help prevent abductions from occurring in the first place. Since 2008, we have received over 1,400 reports made by concerned parents. Each request for prevention assistance we receive is assessed for criticality, and case managers provide case-specific technical support, safety tips and recommendations, and information on the specific country of concern. The National Center is well aware of the inherent, harmful, and lasting effects a child abduction can have on the child and the family. So prevention and public awareness of the issue is key. As we know from statements provided today and previous testimony from many parents and families that have come before Congress, there are certain countries, both Hague and non-Hague, in which the return of an abducted U.S. child is not possible due to the foreign country lacking resources in locating missing children, limited or ineffective civil mechanisms for the enforcement of child custody rights, or the absence of the legal and cultural recognition that family abductions are harmful at all. Since the Hague Convention was drafted more than 30 years ago, and extensive missing child legislation has been implemented in the United States, which includes family abductions, we have made significant progress and have had many successes. but we also recognize that more work remains to be done. Every parent in the U.S., every family court, and every law enforcement agency needs to be made aware of the possibilities and likely outcomes if a child is abducted to or wrongfully retained in another country. We share your concerns on this issue. We're encouraged by the action taken by Congress to tackle this matter and are thankful for the tireless support you provide to families impacted by this. I am hopeful that with further discussion and continued collaboration by all entities involved, that we can improve and expand current resources and the available tools to stop the prevention of international abductions from taking place and quickly bring a resolution and return for those abducted. Members of Congress, Ms. Rutherford, and other invited guests here, I thank you for the chance to be part of this panel and to make you aware of the work that the National Center is doing on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Now we're going to hear from Representative Christopher Smith. Yeah, do you want to say a few words? Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Sheila Jackson Lee, first of all, for convening this important meeting. There is obviously a crisis that's worldwide, and Kelly obviously has been dealing with it with an access case to Monaco with her 2 kids. I think she is in the process of getting some emerging good news in terms of if it's enforced by a court in Monaco. But let me just say very briefly, 8 years ago, I became aware of a case in Brazil. David Goldman's son, Sean, was abducted. His mother died, and the family took ownership of this child and refused even access of David to his son. I went with David on 3 occasions to Brazil. Actually went to the compound when he finally got access after 13 tries, unsuccessful. The 14th was the charm, just to get access to Sean, who had been abducted by his wife, or former wife. The lessons learned over the course of a year, I held 4 hearings on the issue. My committee is known as the Subcommittee on Africa, Global Health, Global Human Rights. So we have a very large portfolio of issues, and I used that to hold 4 hearings on David Goldman's case. He testified several times, and then I realized the law isn't firm. The enforcement of The Hague, which is nil, it's a nice set of admonishments, but it does not have the ability when you have an obstinate party, a parent or a country on the other side. It's great in ideals, very short on enforcement. So I wrote a law. It's called the Sean and David Goldman International Child Abduction Prevention and Return Act. We have a copy of it for you. We work very closely with NCMEC and many other very, very important interested parties in writing it and getting it right. We had the first oversight after the first report came out just a week and a half ago. It has, unfortunately, the administration is deficient in enforcing it, and we're going to have another one on July 13th. To try to get that right. They said Japan has no cases of unresolved cases of abduction. There's well over 50. And NCMEC did testify at our hearing, even at that one, and made it very clear that there were at least 50 cases. And you look at the report, it's nowhere to be found. So we're in the process of trying to make sure that both on the access case and the abduction cases.
Congressman,
yes?
this mother here, her children are in Japan, right?
I have 2 kids in Japan, and it's been 3 years, and my husband, who's American-born, Sean McGee, works for No More Securities,
Right.
and he's holding my kids in Japan for 3 years, and I've not been able to see them. It's very difficult.
Maybe you'd be interested in testifying.
I would testify,
That would be
yes.
July 16th, tentative date. We're working on the date. And as many of us have argued, when one gets to Japan, even though they're recent signatories to the Hague Convention, it is a haven for abductees, whether it be the husband or the wife. Once you get there with that child or children, you're home free. And that is in violation of international law, and they are signatories. In your case, as you know, was grandfathered out because once they signed the Hague with all kinds of caveats, they now have gotten to the point where they're saying, oh, but those old cases, yeah, we'll look into them. And we've been arguing, just for the record, with the administration repeatedly, it's in our law, that they ought to create an MOU to deal with all the unresolved cases that were grandfathered out when they signed the Hague. But the good news is that our legislation also on abduction, but also on access, empowers the administration to take enforcement actions, even if there's one case that goes beyond 12 months. So if Monaco, for example, becomes obstinate or there's a problem with enforcement, after a 12-month time period, that can trigger a very serious set of sanctions, beginning with a simple démarche, a diplomatic, strongly worded note, to economic, security, and other sanctions levied against that government. So we do have the enforcement tools in the new law to help Kelly and many others to ensure that access and in the case of an abduction, your case, that it be resolved and it be resolved as expeditiously as possible. So take a look at this. Thank you for that update, because now we have another witness. But Kelly, thank you for bringing this forward so that everyone sees not only the anguish, but also the determination that you have on behalf of your beloved children. And we will continue to work with all here. And again, I want to thank...
Sorry, Congressman.
Yes.
Yes. Sarah Kurtz right there. Her children are in Sweden, thanks to an American judge who sent them there.
Oh, boy, okay.
Who just lost the Hague Convention case, and she's an attorney.
Well,
So Sarah, you might have to come back to testify.
Sarah, yes, maybe Sarah would want to testify. You know, one of the things that we made very clear in the report that was required, prescribed by the new law, was that accuracy is of utmost importance. There can't be any, diplomatic niceties or an appeal to statecraft to say, well, remember, we'll make it a little bit easier on Japan or Sweden or some of the countries. The report has to get it right. This report did not. I actually called it a whitewash, particularly as it relates to Japan, and we'll have Ambassador Jacobs come and testify. She was out of the country for the one we just had, to try to hold the administration in a civil, but I believe a very necessary way to account. Because when judges look at Sweden, or they look at Monaco, or they look at Japan, or any of these other countries, and they say, oh, 0 cases of noncompliance, as they have done in Japan, where there's well over 50, that makes that judge more prone to allow a family, as you know so well, to travel, a parent with a child, and then it's a one-way ticket, and they never see him again. So let's talk after the meeting, and we'll thank you for inviting me. And Bernie, nothing serious. Gout. Have you ever had gout?
Okay, moving right along. Sarah, I'd love to hear from you, and I think they'd like to hear from you because you have a very compelling story and you've a lot to share.
Thank you. So thank you to our Congresswoman Shella Jackson-Lee and our staff for inviting us here today. My name is Sarah, and I'm an American mother. Yes. I'm also an attorney. About a year ago, on April 11th, 2014, I stood confused in front of a federal court in Los Angeles. I was a nursing mother of a 10-month-old infant and a 6-year-old kindergartner. I was a sleep-deprived and pro se against an army of well-suited attorneys. The father had brought a Hague petition against me. I was being accused of retaining my U.S. citizen children in the U.S. against their Swedish father's consent. The facts are, he had written a letter of consent for our departure from Sweden. He had paid all our flights and school tuition for our son in LA. He came and stayed with us for 3 months in the summer of 2013 after the birth of our daughter. He left us and went back to Sweden. He planned to take on parental leave and come back for 3 months. And he decided that we should move to New York because LA was too far from Sweden. But yet, a year later, he claimed that I retained my children, and the federal court listened to his side of the story without understanding the basis of the Hague Convention. The Hague Convention is based on the habitual residence of the children, meaning where the children have lived for a certain amount of time. In my case, my daughter was born in Los Angeles, and she's never been to Sweden. My son was there for 12 months before we moved back to LA. I had received sole custody in the state court since October 2013. Therefore, I requested the case to be dismissed in the federal court based on those facts. This was the 6 hours of an unfair, grueling trial by the judge, as the appeal court later found. A week later, on April 17, 2014, the judge decided that my children, my American children, would be sent to Sweden, as he found Sweden to be the children's habitual residence, and for Sweden to have jurisdiction over the custody. Even so, the custody and the marriage have been already filed and proceeded in Los Angeles since September 2013. So you can understand my confusion. I'm not a resident of Sweden, nor a citizen, nor are my children, and I cannot reside there to take care of my children. How can this court decide such a thing? I appealed, I filed a stay, it was granted for 48 hours. Given my son's suicidal condition, he refused to return to Sweden and tried to kill himself. He was 6-year-old. He was brought to the ER at UCLA and was kept overnight, and then the doctors put a 72 hours hold on him because they thought he was a danger to himself. Despite the doctor's letters, the therapist's letter, and the church pastor's letter, all describing concern about the children being sent to a foreign country without their mother, the district court judge still felt he was all right to send them away from their home and their mother. On May 2nd, 2014, I was court ordered to go to the UCLA police station at 6 p.m. to hand over my nursing infant to the man who left us. And if I did not obey that court order, I would have been chased by U.S. Marshal like a criminal and put in jail, said the federal judge. I had no choice but to give my children away, my nursing daughter and my 6-year-old. My nursing infant is the first in the history of the Hague Convention to be removed from her country of birth, to be sent in a country she has never been for custody purpose. With the State Department help and the Swedish ambassador pursued to get my US-born a child a Swedish passport, they helped the father violate a federal law, which is to make a US citizen leave the US with another passport than an American passport. Each year, fathers across the world use the Hague Convention to file false kidnapping charges after consenting the mother to return to their home country with the children. This is not the intended purpose of the convention. Often they do this to maintain control. Mothers who have well-documented pattern of serious legal and human rights violation, who in good faith approach the family divorce court system seeking protection for themselves and their children, are instead stripped away from their rights, imputed of their children, and given jail time. The Hague Convention is being used by abusers to control their ex-partners and give no regards to child welfare. The facts are and remain that I've been accused to steal my own uterus from my husband. Then the appeal court stated that an infant born in the US is not automatically a US resident. And the Hague court that I had about a week ago in Sweden decided that my baby was conceived in Sweden, therefore she's a habitual resident of Sweden. So that's what's happening in my world. And the pattern of abuse it keeps going in court, and this is called abuse by proxy, where mothers are stripped away from their rights and lose faith in the system, as we cannot afford the lengthy and expensive process, and most of the mothers give up and go bankrupt and are homeless by trying to stay in country where they're not resident just to see their children. This is our daily reality. Things need to change. I suggest, for example, the central authority, when they receive a Hague petition, they need to actually read it and not automatically accept it. They need to study it and look at the facts and evidence of both sides before deciding of removing small children from their mothers and the US. Then the court system needs to be educated. on the pattern of domestic violence and abuse and the fact of 3 different categories of hate cases. Number 1, hate cases from U.S. parents deciding to go to a different country with their U.S.-born children, like Diana McKee case. Hague parents with different citizenship with kids born in the U.S. And family court cases like Kelly, where children are born in the U.S. and one parent from another nationality. The court orders the U.S.-born children to be sent with that parent to that parent's country, leaving the U.S. and leaving us helpless. This is our reality every day from over 1,500 mothers I know who are American citizens, and we are not allowed, at this point in time, I'm not allowed to see my children. I was there a couple of weeks ago, and the Swedish court decided because I'm an American citizen, I'm not a resident of Sweden, I'm not allowed to even see my children. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your story with us and for your knowledge, too, and expert advice that we're hopefully going to have Congress help us transform into legislation or amended legislation. But in the meantime, we're going to do everything we can to get you your children back. And now Congressman Ted Lieu would like to say a few words. Thank you so much, Congressman Lieu, for coming here today.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here. My office has had the honor and privilege of assisting Kelly Rutherford with her issues. First of all, congratulations on the Monaco court ruling, but we all know that's just a temporary win. What we actually need is for the California court's most recent decision that you have full custody to be enforced. And based on the various testimonies today, it appears that this may be a systematic problem where you have American children being forced to live in foreign countries. And that doesn't make a lot of sense in many instances, specifically in Kelly's case, where the courts have noted that, by all accounts, she's been an amazing mother. There was no reason to take her children away to a foreign country. And if you just read the first court's opinion, they just got it wrong. And we know they got it wrong because the second court reverses. And what we have now is a legal ruling saying Kelly Rutherford has full custody of her children, and that needs to be enforced. So we've had multiple contacts and interactions with the State Department. They keep telling us they don't believe they have the legal authority to do this, so we're now going to see if there's any legislative fixes to give them the authority to do that. And it appears that this is a much more widespread problem. And I'm glad that Congresswoman Jackson Lee is highlighting this. And whatever I can do to help, I will. And look forward to working with all of you to see if we can solve this issue. Thank you.
Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce a dear friend of mine who I actually got to know through her charity work and my charity work. Kelly is not only an amazing mother, as Congressman Ted Lieu said, and I'm sure, Diane, you're an amazing mother, and Sarah, I'm sure you're an amazing mother. So, you know, we're not talking about unfit parents here. We're talking about fit, loving, capable parents, mothers and fathers that should not be separated from their American children, and American children that should not be sent to live in a foreign country when they have an American parent who objects to that. I mean, aren't we all privileged to live in America? I mean, it's the greatest country on earth, so why shouldn't American children born here have the same rights and privileges that we all do? And so we have to fight to bring the children home. But back to Kelly. I've seen her with her children. We rode in a car together to a charity event last year, and they're adorable, and I'm so glad that she's going to be reunited with them next week. And she is fortunate that Monaco recognized that they should be with her and should spend the summer with her. But hopefully they recognize that they shouldn't have jurisdiction over this case, because California clearly said that they retain jurisdiction, that the children are habitual residents of the United States, which is how every court in America should rule, and how every country should really accept that ruling and acknowledge it, and no country should attempt to take an American child and make them their own. And that's one of the things we're going to have to change. And I'm hoping all of you here, and I see a lot of young faces, so I assume that you're probably not congressmen and women yet, but you can, take the first step and take this information back to your congressmen and women and share the knowledge and let them know that American children are being legally kidnapped. And basically, we call it legal kidnapping or court-sanctioned abduction. That's what's happening here. So back to Kelly. I know, I keep talking. I have to just be quiet. But Kelly is amazing, and I want her to share her story. And we're fortunate. No, it's unfortunate that this happened to Kelly, obviously, but we're fortunate that Kelly is the type of woman that doesn't give up. Just like a lot of the mothers here, Sarah and Diane, they're here because they're not giving up on their children. And as Sarah mentioned, unfortunately, a lot of mothers do end up giving up because they run out of money. They get burnt out. They can't handle the stress. I mean, you can only do so much. So we're here, and Kelly's here to fight for the women and children and fathers too. This happens to fathers as well. But we're here, Kelly's here, Sarah's here, to speak up for the we call it the silent victims, the parents, the American parents and the children who don't have a voice, because not everyone can just go and meet with the White House or the State Department or just walk in. I mean, you can technically walk into your congressman or woman's office, but you're not necessarily going to get to meet with them. So we're here because we do have that ability, and we put this together because we needed to bring this case to the Hill. We need to bring awareness. The American people need to know that American children are being legally kidnapped, and American U.S. judges are sending American children to live overseas, and we have to stop it. So with that, I'm going to let Kelly come up here and share her heartbreaking story, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Todd. Todd is the reason I'm here today, and this woman over here, Wendy Murphy, thank you so much for fighting on behalf of my children, and all pro bono, I might add. Todd, you're just such an incredible man and dear friend, and I thank you for making this possible today, along with Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee and her office, Sarah for telling your story, and Maureen for all the great work you're doing, and Congressman Ted Lieu, thank you for being here as well and saying those very kind things and for your support. I never thought that I would be standing here without a script, talking about something so personal. I think the only thing that I do have that so many other mothers that are going through similarly is a voice in the media, which has been a godsend on some level. I hope it's helped in some way to raise some awareness about what's going on. There's so many things that are kind of said, and I think it's important to know that, I'm going into court July 9th and 10th in Los Angeles for California to determine whether they actually even have jurisdiction over my case anymore. So 3 years ago, Judge Teresa Baudet sent my 2-year-old and 5-year-old to a foreign country on an unenforceable order in that foreign country. I had spent $3 million after taxes, which is everything I made, including the sofa under my tushy. I had to sell, everything, fighting for my children. I just thought, I'm in an alternate universe and this can't possibly be happening, and how can it be happening? I've been found, 3 evaluations found that I was a fit mother. I had given natural childbirth. I had breasts. I was like, well, wait a minute. All I ever wanted was to have kids. And here I am 3 years later, after this California judge sent my children to this foreign country. She waited 1.5 years after sending them there to even make her final decision. So I couldn't appeal. I couldn't do anything. I just had to travel back and forth for 1.5 years to see my little babies, who had never really spent much time away from me. I had just filed bankruptcy, so I really didn't even have the money to go to this foreign country. I was trying to sell everything so I could buy a plane ticket to get over there. I've traveled back and forth 70 times to this foreign country, Monaco and France. And now, in the order that sent them there, it says that California shall retain exclusive jurisdiction. I had tried to have the case moved to New York at one point because I had a 7-year contract on Gossip Girl, so I knew I probably wasn't going to go back to California full time, and I was flying back and forth to California for all these court dates. And I was accused of venue shopping, and that they said they would retain jurisdiction no matter what. So all this was based on the fact that my ex said that his work visa was revoked. The guy that had filled out his application for his work visa was convicted of visa fraud. That didn't matter to anyone. And his visa was revoked just conveniently right after his settlement with Google. And so there was very little evidence of kind of what had gone down with this visa. So I had said to the court, well, listen, you know, I want the kids to see their dad. I never asked for full custody. I never asked for a penny from him. I really wanted this to be amicable. I wanted us to be great parents. And why don't I fly the kids to this foreign country every holiday, all summer, and we can meet in Bermuda or Toronto or anywhere else that he can get in to. And this way, we wouldn't risk any other country taking jurisdiction. We wouldn't risk the problem that I now face today, which, again, as a tax-paying U.S. citizen mother and already being bankrupted through the family court system and having done nothing wrong, I'm now forced to go fight this in a foreign country as my children get older and older and older. You know, I've watched them, as Sarah has, go through an enormous amount of stress because of this. I've certainly taken the high road and done my best to speak highly of their father and be honest at the same time. So now, again, here I am in California. The last time I went to France, I've only been allowed to see my children 10 days this year. My ex-husband has not been following the custody orders of California or Monaco. The last time I went to see them, I flew over there and he said, you cannot see them unless you turn over their US passports, which is not in any order. So it was basically, unless you can have the children for their US passports. And I was advised not to do that. So I came home and we filed in California court and basically said, okay, he was sent over there because of this visa situation. You had asked him to make good faith efforts to renew his visa. I have a letter from the State Department saying he has not made any good faith efforts in the last 3 years to get his visa. I'm now not even able to see my kids, so they ordered that, you know, I would have temporary custody and the kids were supposed to be sent home. And that was just recently and kind of what was in the news. Now what's happening is that he appealed that, of course, in California. So everything that he's done has been put totally aside, and I'm now forced to prove that I live in California. Which is just, at this point, I'm sure, pure entertainment, because I'm thinking, okay, why is the burden being put on me to prove that I live in California? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm living in the same place I lived when this case started. Nothing has changed. You know, everything's being ignored that's happened. And it's still 7 years later. So here I am going to court, and he's deposing me. He's wanting to ask again about all my finances. And this is all allowed to happen. So the only person that's having to do anything is me again, while my kids sit in a foreign country. So I went over to Monaco because he was trying to take all my rights away, asked for sole custody in Monaco after asking for jurisdiction there. So I went and met with the court there. And they agreed that given the fact that it's in 2 court orders that my kids should come home for the summer, that they thought it was a good idea that they did come home for the summer, which was good. A win, I guess. So anyway, now this is where the case is. So this is obviously something that I see a lot of young women here today who will probably never marry a foreigner after hearing these stories. They're cute, the accents are amazing, but it's a very expensive accent. Now, look, it's been a huge learning experience, and we all fall in love, and I fell in love with someone, and I wanted kids, and if I had known that this was even possible in my own country as a mother, I mean, it just never occurred to me that this could ever happen. But it is happening, and it's happening every day, and it's happening to people who can't talk about it. They have nowhere to go. They've lost hope. So hopefully we can raise a lot of awareness around this. Hopefully California will retain jurisdiction and do the right thing and set an example. I do hope that they do that. Otherwise, I don't know who has jurisdiction of my children at this point in America, even though they were born in America, to an American mother, and hold U.S. passports. So it's going to be interesting. So stay tuned. We'll keep you posted. And I just thank you all for being here and whatever you can do. I mean, we're all in this together, and I'm glad that it's getting some traction and people are really starting to take notice, so that we can change it, so that the next generation doesn't have to deal with this anymore, and they can just be with their babies, be good parents. So thank you so much.
Yes, for all you young women out there, and men, girls have sexy accents overseas too. So, no, I know. We're going to be gender neutral, although, it does raise a good point, and Sarah and I talked about this, and in doing research, there is a certain amount of gender bias out there, isn't there? Sarah, do you want to just mention something about that?
What happened to fathers is basically when they marry a woman from Australia or France, when they get through a divorce in America, the court asks the mother, do you want to stay here or do you want to go back home? And obviously the mothers all want to go back home. So they have the right to take their kids back to Australia or France. Therefore, the fathers lose custody of their children in America too. But what happened with hate cases is if the mothers decide to go back home and the father agrees in the beginning and then disagree afterwards, then they can file a hate convention against the mothers who went back to Europe. And I'm working with about 20 women right now who are, 2 of them are in jail in Texas for kidnapping, and they did not kidnap them. They just went back home per court order, but the father changed their mind. There are a lot of gender bias cases that I am working with, and we're trying to change that. It's a lot between Europe and the United States. If you marry somebody from another country, you have to be aware of the consequences after the divorce if you have children.
Yeah. And I would also, the other thing I've noticed is when I talk to people about this, when you hear that kids are taken away from a father, the reaction is usually, oh, that's terrible, that's wrong. But when a child's taken away from a mother, the initial question is, what did she do wrong? So, there's immediately an assumption that the father's been wronged, but the mother did something bad. I mean, that's not right. And it immediately puts the burden on the mother and on women. So there's gender bias, and what I've also noticed is there's, blame the victim mentality. I've had people say that Kelly shouldn't have, married a German man and had his kids.
They were right.
So it's not too late for all of you out there.
No, but they also ask us to do evaluation. They don't ask their fathers to go through drug tests or alcohol tests, but we have to go through all of that. And I'm well educated. I'm an attorney. I never done anything wrong. You can even find a ticket. I never even had a ticket. Never been pulled over. But he had no problem convincing the court that you should have custody of the American children.
But it's not really just can be very gender neutral, and I think we need to focus on the issue at hand, which is that there are laws put in place to protect U.S. citizen children, and both parents need to really get involved and get behind this, because it does happen and there's like unconscious judicial bias. Let's face it, there's a study at Cornell and I think Harvard right now about this, so it does happen. It does happen.
Yeah, it does. And I was actually, since I've been helping Kelly on her case and have gotten more involved in other cases, I've been contacted by people on Facebook asking for help, and I just, there's a man in New Jersey whose wife, she's American, but she fell in love with an Australian man. He agreed to allow her to bring the kids over there for a short period of time, temporarily, and now he hasn't had contact with the child, and she's keeping them in Australia away from him. So this happens to men and women for sure, but there's a little bias. We could say there's a little bias against women here. But I want to give Kelly's attorney just a moment to say a few words. She came down here from Boston and has worked a great deal on this issue.
Thank you so much, Tom. Yeah, good idea. Okay. Yeah, I didn't come from France, which is impressive, but I did come through a tornado. I'm only kidding. We did have a tornado, but it wasn't in my house. All right, I only want to say a couple of things, just to expand a little bit, because you've heard so much, and it's really the compelling real-life stories that matter. But I'm an academic. I run the Women's and Children's Advocacy Project under the Center for Law and Social Responsibility at New England Law Boston. And in that capacity, I do a lot of impact litigation, almost always in federal court, and almost always involving important rights, constitutional rights, civil rights, and so forth. What matters to me, and that we haven't touched on, is the invisibility of the children, and in terms of having real rights. When a family court does something to a child, and it causes harm to the child's constitutional or citizenship rights, the invisibility problem arises because children aren't parties in family court cases, the cases between the mom and the dad. The kids are like houseplants, and I mean that in the most direct sense of the phrase houseplants, because they are really treated like stuff, like the property of the parents, and that bothers me, but it's a reality we have to deal with. It bothers me as an activist for kids' rights. So being an attorney and being able to file a case in federal court on behalf of the kids was really important to me, because I was giving voice to the children and I was giving them status. I filed in federal court and said, listen, these children are American citizens. You can't just ship American citizens, adult or children, to live in a foreign country. We have a right to live in our own country. And these weren't even dual citizenship kids, which are some cases. Sarah's case is a dual citizenship case. Lots of these cases with the big Hague problems are dual citizenship cases. Kelly's kids are American citizens. The father's German. The judge didn't send them to live in Germany, even if they were German citizens, which they're not on the record. They're not French. They were sent to live in France. They're not Monegasque. They were sent to live in Monaco. In other words, when the kids got there, they became nationless. Absolutely no citizenship, because the Monaco court initially, or the first time it ruled, said, I'm not going to pay attention to American law. I'm going to declare these children citizens of Monaco, residents of Monaco, and I'm going to ignore American law, which is the same thing as saying I'm going to ignore the fact that these children are American citizens. Landing nationless in a foreign country, when it happens to an adult, there are lots of things we can do about it. We can file lawsuits all day long. Kids can't. So when I filed for Kelly's kids, and what I want you to know about this is how important it is that we, I think, be grateful that we're here today talking about the importance of taking the invisibility problem and elevating it to a federal level. I mean, that is a miracle if we can get that done, because when I stood up in front of the Second Circuit Federal Court of Appeals, the three judges who deal with Hague cases all the time, so they know about these custody issues internationally speaking, And one of them said to me, "Ms. Murphy, I've been doing this work for 39 years. I've never seen a case like this." And what he meant was, I've never seen a case where a state court judge ordered American citizen children to move to a country where they have no rights. Never seen it. So I said, of course, well, if we win, you'll never see it again, you know, right? Well, we didn't win yet. The case is still pending. We're still waiting for the final decision. But it was a riveting issue for the courts, riveting for us, it's riveting for these parents. But the federal court said, I don't understand this case. And what they were really saying was, these issues, if they're happening at a systemic level, and they are, how come we don't know about them? I was given 10 minutes to argue the case. They kept me up there for 30 minutes because they were so perplexed. And it's really not called deportation, it's called expatriation. You know, if you have a right to live in your own country and you're forced into exile, that's called expatriation. We can do that if we want to be expats and live in a beautiful, I would love to live in Siena for 5 years, right? It's beautiful to live in other countries if you want to, if you choose to be an expat. You can't make that choice if you're a child. So that's a big part of what we're talking about, that, that voicelessness, that, you know, forced loss of rights imposed on a defenseless child who can't make the choice and who has no legal redress after it happens. That is what we're talking about. So the second point I want to say is this: as a policy matter, what we're talking about is a foreign person, male or female, comes to this country and agrees to have children here with an American spouse, American partner. Here's what we're making, here's really what the issue is, and here's what we need to make a choice about. If things break down and the parent from a foreign country wants to go back to their country, which is perfectly fine, who are we going to burden? Are we going to say to the foreign parent, you came here knowing that if you had children here, they would have citizenship rights here? So we want to say to the children born here, tough luck. Tough luck. You gotta leave your own country. Or do we want to say to the parents who choose to have children here, you bear the burden. You bear the burden. Find a way to visit your children. But do not ask your own country, their own country, to make them leave and live elsewhere. That's an easy choice, right? Our law is silent on, as between those choices, which thing is correct. I think that's a no-brainer. And so what I want to see Congress do, in addition to all the suggestions we've already heard, is pass a law that just gives this issue an opportunity to make it to federal court for review. If a state family court judge wants to impose on the citizenship rights of an American child, let a federal court make the final decision about whether the state court got it right or wrong. This isn't just a Hague Convention issue, it's a citizenship issue, and there's nothing more precious. It's wrong that we don't have laws in place to protect that important right on behalf of voiceless kids.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate your remarks and your suggestions. So I want to just take a few minutes and open up the floor to questions from our guests. And Diane, you came down here from New Jersey. Why don't you briefly share your story with our guests here? Here, you could stand up.
I went to Japan for an expat assignment with my husband. His name is Sean McGee. He's not Japanese. And we went there for a temporary assignment. And we were married 25 years. Our marriage broke down. And we agreed to come home. There's no dispute, and it was agreed upon. We were coming home to get a divorce. I filed in New Jersey for a divorce, and he contested it, and we had to wait over a year to get a decision on jurisdiction. My children are all residents of the state of New Jersey. They're bona fide residents of the United States. They've only held American passports. They're not Japanese. They have blonde hair and blue eyes. Nobody's Japanese. He is holding them in Japan. They haven't been home to the U.S. to see their grandfather, their grandparents, and he's holding them in Japan for 3 years, and he will not bring them back, even though they're residents of the United States. And that's it. Thank you.
So this is why we're here today, to give mothers like Diane and Kelly and Sarah a voice. Because, you know, before today, Kelly had a voice because she's an actress and a public figure and beloved by people around the world. But everyone should have a voice. Everyone has a right. And, you know, as we discussed, the children have rights. So we're here not just for the mothers and the fathers, but we're here for the children and the thousands of children that don't have a voice right now or are unable to speak up and are suffering emotionally, psychologically, and God forbid, physically. We don't know. There's no child protective services in other countries. I mean, there are in those countries, but at least here, if they were in the U.S., you could call child protective services, depending, you know, whatever state they're in. But we don't know if they're 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 miles away. How do we know what's happening with those children right now? And these are American children. These are our fellow U.S. citizens that deserve the same rights and privileges that we all have as American citizens. It's very simple. It's not that complicated. We make it seem complicated, and you know, we know from talking to a lot of different agencies and departments, and no one wants to get involved because they have lots of different explanations for not getting involved. It's a custody case, it's a private matter, it's in the courts, we're, you know, federal agency, we can't intervene. Someone has to intervene, someone has to speak up, someone has to do something. And fortunately, we have people like Wendy, we have people like Kelly, we have people like Sarah, and we have people like Maureen who are doing something about it. And hopefully all of you will do something about it, because every one of you in this room has a voice. You can speak up for the American children that have been legally kidnapped. You can go back to your legislators and say, we can't just sit back and let this continue. There's about 1,000 cases a year of children being abducted internationally by parents. In fact, I think I read something like between 2008 and 2013, there's over 8,000 cases. And what really blew my mind was the fact that we're not even talking about the case where where a parent kidnaps them and runs away without, just takes them on their own. We're talking about judges giving them the legal authority and approval to take the children with them to another country. In most cases, they must know that there's a risk that they might not come back. Because in Kelly's case, the judge actually put in the final judgment multiple times. She referenced the Hague Abduction Convention on Children, or Hague Convention on the Abduction of Children. So why would the judge have mentioned the Hague Convention in her final judgment if she didn't think the Hague might become an issue? And you know, that brings up another point. Where is Judge Teresa Bidet, the one that sent Kelly's kids to France in the first place, right? How come she's not being called upon to testify here and explain her rationale? And I'll tell you why, because there's no accountability with US judges. They're free to rule however they want. There's no jury. They make their own decisions. Only if you appeal, and you have to have money to appeal, and you have to have the wherewithal, the resources. And it's just not right. You know, I was telling Kelly a couple of weeks ago, we rate restaurants, right? We give them grades, A, B, and C. We rate our doctors, health grades. Why don't we rate judges? Judges should be graded on how well their rulings are reasoned and justified. So we're going to change the law, because we're going to start holding judges accountable, especially in cases of custody, especially with children, and especially where we're talking about sending an American child to live in a foreign country, because as all of you heard here today, we're risking their residency, we're risking their lives. And with that, I do want to open up the floor and find out if, you know, any of you have any questions, comments for any of the speakers, or generally. Yes.
My question is from Ms. Rutherford.
Yeah, can you stand up?
Yeah, of course. So how does this pertain to like the confrontation clause with the kids testifying? I know in the Hague litigation guide it says that the court can sua sponte ask, can interview the children. And I know as it pertains to cases like familial sexual abuse, I did some research for a writing class, and courts can actually interview children to a set age. They can ask the children to testify if it is pertinent, if it is absolutely pertinent to like the adjudicating of the person who is the defendant. So have the children been able to testify, or has that even been a question?
I like you already. Because I think children should be, I think there should be rules in every state and under federal law where children have a right to testify, unless somebody makes a finding that will be really harmful. Because kids are really credible. I prosecuted child abuse cases for a long time. They're so credible because they're terrible at lying. They should be allowed to testify. Now, I don't agree that a child should be allowed to stand up and say, I like mommy better, or I like daddy better. And that can be really stressful on a child to ask that kind of question. But to get to the nitty gritty of your point, there's no fine line. What age can a child have a right to speak in terms of voicing an opinion about where they'd like to live? And under the Hague, the cases are like 12, 11 or 12, 13, when they start to have more of the right to speak, but it's a gray area because some kids at 12 are very capable, some not.
And how old are those little children now?
They were 2 and 5, they're now 6 and 8.
Yeah. You want this?
But before she explains the ages for kids, the one other thing I want to say is, because kids can't often express themselves with what you would call legal competency on any issue, they may not be competent. I mean, Sarah's 10-month-old baby couldn't speak at all. And what I want to emphasize about Kelly's case that matters a lot is that an attorney was appointed for the kids in California, and that attorney not only said Kelly is an excellent mother and is the primary caregiver and should keep the children based on her as a parent, that attorney said the children's best interest is to stay here. And the judge ignored that. Ignored Kelly, ignored the kid's attorney, and ignored the Constitution. Shipped the kids away like luggage because the father claimed he was unable to enter this country because his work visa was revoked. But guess what? We don't even think it was a valid document that he gave the court saying his visa was revoked. But even if it were true that his work visa was revoked, I'm partly German. I've been to Germany. I know Germans who've been here. You don't need a visa to come here and visit your children. You just need a passport. So how come his revocation not only was enough to give the judge pause, but to command the expatriation of children? Why didn't the judge say, come on a passport, visit your kids for 90 days at a time? Because that's what passports allow, right? Todd's point is the most important on this, which is when the judge did what she did, she knew she could get away with it because there is no accountability. When a family court judge violates the constitutional rights of a child, there is no accountability.
Thank you.
No, I mean, my children weren't asked at 2 and 5 if they wanted to leave their mother and their country, you know, to be sent to a foreign country. And I know that that's the reason there were evaluations done of our family. You know, there were 3 evaluations done of, you know, who should the kids be with. And the kids were interviewed by the evaluators. So there is some process where the kids are involved. It's just very stressful at these young ages for them to have to stand up. And like she said, it ends up being, who do you love? Who do you, and it's very, very, as you know, we can all imagine as young kids what that would be like with our parents, you know. So, yeah, it's very difficult.
I think, you know, if the children are living with their foreign parent in a foreign country, there's a certain amount of, you know, let's just say brainwashing that can go on. I mean, that parent has plenty of time, and, you know, I can say this from experience because I'm a child of divorced parents that, you know, parents don't always talk very nicely about the other parent. And whether it's conscious or subconscious, you can influence that child. So I don't think necessarily asking children, you know, who they'd want to live with after a certain period of time is really all that useful. And in Sarah's case, I mean, it was clear that her son did not want to move to Sweden, yet that didn't stop the judge from sending him there.
The judge actually refused to listen. We requested a guardian ad litem to come and speak on behalf of my son, and the judge refused that. He said he's too young to speak, to decide where he wants to live.
So he's too young to decide where he wants to live, but not too young to want to take his own life. Any other questions?
I'm curious about the representative from Nickimick, what she thinks could be changed in the law.
Yeah,
I was having
that's a good
some
point.
conversation
Yeah, Maureen.
shift away
Yeah,
from-
we'd love to hear your thoughts, having heard all this.
Well, one of the things,
And actually, I just sort of like pretext the question. So I'm sort of happy to see that the conversation shifted away from just not marrying a foreigner to actually changes in the law that we
Yeah.
can look at. You can still get a child out of the country without a passport through Canada. The State Department changes every 2 years. They lose track of cases after they turn 16. Those are real issues. We didn't even touch non-Hague countries.
I'm sorry, who are you with?
I'm just an independent citizen. Lack of judge education for judges on prevention of parental abduction. So I'm just curious about what you think
No,
Congress can do.
absolutely. One of the things I think I picked up, especially at the very beginning, was judicial training. And one of the things that we were so happy to see in the legislation that Congressman Smith drafted and then that was passed was there is provision specifically for judicial training. And I think in regards to whether or not you're working with a non-Hague or Hague country, a country that's considered compliant or non-compliant, I think what everyone shares is that there's a lot of frustrations in these cases. There's delays, there's financial expenses. So how can this be a much quicker and much more positive sort of situation for everyone involved? And I think part of it is that judicial training, both here in the United States and overseas. And in addition to making sure that there is clear information that is publicly available to anyone that is a stakeholder in the situation, from guardian ad litems, attorneys, parents, judicial members. So having clear reporting information and knowing sort of what to be able to expect is so important for those people who are in the process potentially of going into a court proceeding or in the middle of a court proceeding. So we are very happy to see the legislation pass, and we're hopeful that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're part of a group with the State Department and other federal agencies to try and make sure that we're looking at best practices all around, and we're very supportive of that. And of course, having you all here from Congress, your support to making sure that these reports are done in a timely manner and that they're complete is so important to us. And any additional support that you can provide to make sure that there's an awareness of the issue, which is also, I think, sometimes one of the problems that we have, that people just don't know that this even happens in the United States. So did I cover most, or was there?
No, that's great.
Okay. Was there any other questions?
I have one more actually.
Oh, sure.
So do you know anything about a lot of Western countries provide resources to the left behind parent in the country where the child was taken, but the United States does not? Do you have any experiences with that sort of issue, and why the U.S. or should the U.S. provide resources to left behind parents?
I guess it may vary regarding what type of resources you're discussing or talking about. One of the things that we try to do, we're a nonprofit, non-government entity, and we try to make sure that as a clearinghouse and a resource center, that if there is something that maybe the government cannot provide, that we're trying to provide that for the parent. So a lot of times it's technical assistance on questions about civil or criminal aspects, making sure that if it's appropriate that law enforcement's being engaged on the issue, that parents know that they may have resources through the family courts. And then if they do have an active case overseas, we do have a victim victim reunification program that we're able to provide, as well as counseling for the families throughout the whole process. So I guess it will vary, and it's always, with all these matters, I think it's always very case by case. And what we're trying to do here at times as a national center is to make sure that whatever best way we can support, that we're supporting the families and all the individuals involved in a case.
Thank you, Maureen. All right, thank you. That was good questions. Anyone else have any other questions before we wrap up? And we're all going to be up here for a few minutes. If any of you want to come up here and speak with us or want additional information. And we really appreciate you joining us today and learning about this important issue.